Blog Talk Radio.
93. County 23, I'll give you a corrected address, but you have a fire in a one-story ordinary. Looks like it's about 40 by 120, 125. We'll get to traffic control. Squad 5, Squad 5. Angle to 273, 273. Angle Battalion 18, 18 Battalion. With the 273, 273.
Well, good evening, everybody, and welcome to Fire Engineering Talk Radio, another installment of the Professional Volunteer Fire Department, where I like to spend some time and get people to call in, and we can talk and examine and discuss issues that are of concern to the volunteer fire service. And at the same time, we always like to get back to the main theme, the main message, and reinforce that message that being a volunteer firefighter in no way means you cannot be a professional firefighter. I'm your host, Tom Merrill. I'm glad you're taking the time out to join me and listen in. I encourage you to feel free to call in and talk about whatever might be on your mind concerning our great volunteer fire service, no matter where you live, no matter where you reside, and help me get the message out. And let me know what you're doing to get that message out. Tell me about the great things you're doing. And to reinforce that the message being a professional firefighter has nothing to do with earning that paycheck. I know there's thousands of you out there doing great things every day and exhibiting that professional image that we all strive for. I read about it every day, and I'm sure you do too. There's great things being done out there. So if you'd like to call in, the number is 760-454-8852. And I know there's many of you out there that support that concept. Again, thanks for listening in. Thanks to all of you who have reached out to me. You're contacting me via my email or on my Facebook page. Send me a friend request. I'll be happy to friend you back, asking me questions, or better yet, sharing stories of the great things going on in your department, in your hometown, to help get that professional message out there, telling me about your professional operations. And I encourage you to continue doing that. Contact me via Facebook or my email, tamerrill63@aol.com. My kids laugh at me and say, are you going to get a newer email? I don't know. That's the one I've had since the Internet started, so I'm not going to change. But tell me what's going on in your community. Tell me about the challenges. We all have challenges as well, and I'd like to hear about them, and maybe we can share the stories on the show. But wherever you're listening in from, I certainly hope you're warm, because I know if you're in the East Coast or even the Midwest area and even down to the South a little bit, it's been very cold and snow and even blizzards. And if you're out west, I think you're dealing with a lot of rain. But I got to tell you, it is extremely cold here across the Northeast. We're used to it in Buffalo, but this has been a very challenging month. Lots of snow on the ground, as there is elsewhere. And matter of fact, you know what I did today? I spent 3 hours on my roof, shoveling my roof off because there was so much snow up there, and I was concerned about, A, the weight, but also trying to get some of the ice jams out of there so the water didn't back up into my house. But you know what that was like? That was like truck work. And anyone that knows me knows that I prefer engine work. Nothing against truck work at all, but I've just always had a passion for the engine work. But boy, do I feel like I did a lot of truck work today. I was even chopping ice with a pickaxe and doing a lot of shoveling and pushing and pulling, and it was a lot of work. And it is cold. It's actually warmer tonight than it's been. It's 10 degrees. Last night at this time it was about 0, but there's no reprieve in sight because I think by tomorrow it's going back below 0 again. So challenging times in my area, but not just in my area. I have a feeling wherever you're listening in from, you have challenges with your weather as well. And it got me thinking, too, about cold weather operations. I don't know a lot about hot weather operations, but cold weather operations I think we could devote an entire show to someday, because it certainly is a challenge. It is something we have to be aware of and be prepared if there is a major incident or even a minor incident in this cold weather. And prior to an incident, you've got to take care of yourself. You've got to wear warm clothes, dress in layers. You know what I find, though? That can also hinder your movement when you go to put on turnout gear. When I wear my job shirt or my sweatshirt at the firehouse and then we get a run, I find that I'm a little restricted with my gear. So sometimes I take the sweatshirt off. Is that a good idea? I don't know, but sometimes it gives me a little bit more mobility. And socks, obviously we won't dry socks. Some people like to put 2 socks on if they're going out into the cold, but then it might be harder to get your boots on. I'm a big advocate of the knit hat on your head if you're at an incident where you don't need your helmet. That knit hat certainly keeps the warmth in. And these are all things to be thinking about even before those tones drop. I know a lot of people like to keep extra clothes at the firehouse, so when they get back from an incident, they can change into warm, dry clothing. I do know people that also keep them in their personal vehicle. But again, the challenge there is it's cold. So things to think about. Speaking of your personal vehicle, and I know we talked about this last month, that some people like to keep their gear in their car, and some companies now are frowning upon that due to carcinogen concerns and contamination concerns. Certainly understand that, but let's say you take care of your gear, you wash it regularly, and you keep it in the car because you're quite a distance from the firehouse and you're allowed to keep it in your car. And I know there's a lot of people, including myself, that keep gear in their car. Do you bring it in at night, or are you going out into the cold, especially in this cold where it's 0, 10 degrees or even colder, and now standing outside in your clothes putting your gear on? Not always a great way to get started at an operation. Not at all. So I used to bring my gear in, at least the bunker pants, sometimes a whole set, so we could be dressing in warm gear. It certainly made it a lot nicer. And again, that's just prior to the incident, thinking of that type of stuff. How about the incident response in your personal vehicle? I see firefighters oftentimes jumping in their car and just going and using the windshield wipers without clearing the car properly. Be safe. We want residents to be safe, but we want you to be safe. Response safety. Clean your car off. Brush it off correctly. Make sure you can see. Obviously, driving conditions are not conducive to driving at the regular speed, so we're going to slow down even more. And I'd like to hear if anybody's out there is using the drop-down change on their apparatus to help get traction. We don't have them in my company. We've talked about it in the past, but we have never purchased them in my area, and I've heard good and bad with them, but some companies do like the drop-down change, gives them better traction, allows them to move a little better, and I'd like to hear stories on that if anybody has success or failure stories with that. And another big challenge, and you know this, is we can't find our hydrants. They're buried in snow. Right now on my front lawn, there's over probably 30 inches of snow on my front lawn. And it's even higher along the streets from the plows pushing the snow out of the way. The hydrants are buried. Now, we do have hydrant markers, hydrant flags that stick up 3 feet or so to help find the hydrant, but then we have to dig it out. And I got to tell you, we have spent many hours in my department sending crews out shoveling fire hydrants, and there's a big campaign on county-wide trying to make residents aware of their responsibility to help out. It's a little contentious. Share a war story here. I do work at the communications center, and we have taken many phone calls from people that are demanding the fire company come and shovel the hydrants, and we're doing the best we can. Again, everyone's a volunteer. Everyone's working their regular job, taking care of their own house. People are asking that we come out and shovel hydrants, and if we can get to them, we will. What are you doing in your area? Are you out there shoveling the hydrants? Do you require your residents to do it? Maybe you don't have hydrants in your area, so that's not a big concern for you, but I got to imagine tanker operations in cold weather is a pretty challenging situation as well. So getting to the call, driving to the call safely, dealing with these incidents. Now we get to the scene. There's a whole nother slew of problems that could happen, isn't there? Frozen fire hydrants. Oftentimes the fire hydrants are frozen, requiring us to move down the road to another one. We have I mentioned about the buried hydrants, so if we get to a hydrant that's buried, we have to dig it out, which is pretty tiring and exhausting. As a matter of fact, on our frontline pumpers right now, we have a shovel on the front bumper of every pumper to make it quicker to get there to the shovel and start digging the hydrant out if we got to one that wasn't already dug out. And how about the working conditions in this weather, right? Cold, wet, exposure issues, even if it's a medical call where someone fell outside or a motor vehicle accidents. It is tough. It is tough. And then frozen lines at fires. We like to keep the nozzles cracked open a little bit when we shut them down to keep water flowing so the line doesn't freeze. But what does that do? It leads to icing conditions. It leads to slips and falls. Before you know it, we have ice in the streets, around the rigs. People fall. I have a very good friend who's one of our assistant chiefs, is a Buffalo firefighter, and he was at a call last night, and unfortunately Buffalo had a guy take a pretty hard fall. He slipped and fell and hurt an elbow pretty badly and had to go to the hospital. So winter operations are a huge challenge. We like to keep rock salt or ice melt right on the rig, as I'm sure many departments do, and we keep sprinkling as often as we can to try and melt the ice and try and make it safer. Did you ever see videos of ladders slipping on the ice, highlighting the importance yet again of having it properly footed? Frozen couplings can be a major problem as well when we go to undo the hose and pack it. One old school trick, and I don't even know if I can say this, I don't know if people would look at me funny to bring up an old school trick. We used to take and put it under the exhaust of the truck to try and melt the ice that was around the coupling. I don't know if that safety advocates would look at that in the wrong way today, that we might be breathing in diesel fumes. I don't remember breathing into diesel fumes, but maybe you can do it in such a safe way for a couple minutes that you're not endangering yourself. But that was an old school trick we used to do, was put it under the exhaust to try and thaw it out so we could get the hose uncoupled, or take it back to the firehouse to pack it where it's warm and dry, and maybe you'd even get some new hose to replace all that wet snow. And then frozen sprinkler lines. And we've already had several incidents of those throughout my town where sprinkler heads are popping, and it's going to get even worse when we thaw out. They're predicting we're not going to get above freezing this whole month. So maybe by June or July, when things start thawing out here in the Buffalo area and across the East Coast, then maybe when these lines start thawing out, we usually see an increase of burst pipes and sprinkler lines and sprinkler heads, leading to a whole bunch of calls and responses. But holy cow, we could spend an entire show on cold weather and I'm sure warm weather operations, but it is a challenging time. It makes for very, very fun times, and that's what's going on in the Western New York area. I hope where you are, you're warm and dry and safe, and I know after the show tonight I'm going to park in front of my fireplace and share time with the family, and that's what we do here is, to stay warm. And like I said, June's not that far away. What else is going on in the fire service before we get to our main guest tonight? We have a very, very very good guest tonight. Candice McDonald's going to come on. I'll talk a little bit about her and what she does in a little bit, but we're going to talk about reputation management tonight and what we can all do to better get that message out, delivering that professional message, and how we need to be aware of things in our firehouse that could be detrimental to that professional image. So we're going to invite her on in just a little bit here. And before I do that, just want to cover some other news and events in the great fire service worldwide. And as a reminder, the big FDIC convention is only a couple of months away. It seems like that comes very, very fast. It'll be in Indianapolis, April 20th to the 25th, and I hope to see many of you there. Feel free to come up and introduce yourself to me, and I'm doing a 4-hour workshop on the professional volunteer service on Tuesday. And hopefully if you can't make that, I can see you out and about at the show and on the street, maybe at some of the other classes. And for anyone that hasn't been there, if there's any way possible to try and make arrangements within your department to go to the premier fire event in the world, this is it, with 35,000 of your brother and sister firefighters. And you know what I've always liked about it? It doesn't matter if you're from a small department, a large department, if you're career or if you're volunteer. Everyone's a brother, everyone's a sister, and the camaraderie and networking is second to none. And the knowledge that you take away from those classes and bring back to your firehouse will pay dividends forever. I like to say that I would say 80, maybe 90% of my own department's SOPs are probably filled with material that we picked up and brought back and trained on and tried ourselves and adopted in my own home department. So if there's any way to make it, FDIC is the premier fire show, and we'd love to see you there, and hopefully I can meet many of you there. And again, it's coming up in Indianapolis, April 20th to 25th. And as a reminder, one of the big things there is the Ray Downey Courage and Valor Award, and that's something to keep in mind. If you know someone that did something above and beyond in the line of duty. Made a great save, great rescue. Keep that in mind, and there's a link to it right on the FDIC homepage or the fireengineering.com. There's a tab for FDIC, and right under that you can see all the information on nominating somebody for the Ray Downey, the late great Ray Downey, fantastic chief officer in the FDNY, murdered on 9/11, and in his memory, his family has a scholarship, a Courage and Valor Award, and it's something to keep in mind if you ever know anyone deserving of such an award. This would be the way to honor them, and so just keep that in mind. And other things going on, it's with a heavy heart and sad note that 2015 hasn't started off so great in the category of line of duty deaths or injuries. It's been a rough start, and I think we honor those that have made the supreme sacrifice by talking a little bit about it, or at least acknowledging, and it's just been a very, very rough start to the year. And just within the past week, we lost a brother firefighter down in the Georgia area when he fell through a floor at a structure fire, and a firefighter from the Macon Bibb Fire Department, and 5 others were hurt. And it was just within the last week down in Georgia. And then just the other day, we've had several incidents where firefighters have been hit and struck and killed by motor vehicles. I think there was just one the other day down in South Carolina, Sandy Springs Volunteer Fire Company, I believe, Volunteer Fire Department. There was a firefighter struck, and he was killed, unfortunately. Former Marine, he was a Cub Scout master, and he was assisting at an auto wreck when he was struck. Firefighter Kenny Stanton, he was 52 years of age, and it's just tragic. And by our counts, that's the 4th line of duty death this year on a highway. And just again a word of caution that we need to be careful on these highways. Again, this week in Hartford or in Connecticut, a fire vehicle stopped to check on an accident, and the vehicle was struck. And luckily, no serious injuries. They were just checking to see if anybody was hurt, and another vehicle crashed into the back of I believe it was a Chief Suburban or a Rescue Suburban, and totaled that Suburban. And luckily, nobody was killed there. Montgomery County, Maryland, the other day, they had an ambulance get hit up on a highway on I-495, and it just is a reminder of the dangers on these highways. You know what I used to say when I was a chief, and I think many of you will share this share this thought, share this belief, that I feared a line of duty death on our highway incidents probably more than I did at a structure fire. I really did. It's just so out of control on these highways, and a topic for a future show. We are going to talk about highway safety. I've got some great guests lined up for future talks on highway safety and response safety. Mike Wilbur's going to join us in the near future, and Jack Sullivan and other experts on driving and operating on roadways safely are going to be joining me down the road. Another really sad incident, just within the last couple of weeks, we had a fire chief in Illinois got backed over by a fire truck as he was trying to back it up. I don't know any of the details. There's no blame being assigned at all. I bring it up just so we can learn from these incidents, so we can try and prevent these same tragedies from happening in our firehouse. And when I see the backup fatality, it brings me back to my own firehouse, where we do have a spotter policy that everyone's supposed to have a spotter no matter when they're backing up or how far they're backing up. And we've had it for years. And one day I saw one of our own firefighters almost get run over. It was a quite horrific scene. Luckily, he didn't. He was missed by inches. And I convened our officers and told them we've had this spotter policy forever, but we're going to really focus on it. And I went to our board, fire commissioners, and got their buy-in to refocus on that, and we did. And if you don't have a spotter policy, I would highly recommend that you implement one in your firehouse. And very sad situation in Illinois where this fire chief was backed over and killed just within the last couple weeks. And sometimes it's our own personal vehicles. We have to remember that, we want to get to the call, and sometimes we get excited. But things to focus on in your firehouse and in your drills is due diligence when we're driving our own personal vehicles. We had a firefighter in the New York State area where one firefighter struck another firefighter as they were responding to a call. And the one firefighter, I believe, was pulling up and unfortunately hit another firefighter who didn't. He's okay. He's got some fractures, but from what I've read, he's okay, and it's going to be a long recovery. But again, just something to think about. We need to be careful. We need to respond appropriately and carefully and implement policies, procedures, and focus training so this doesn't happen in our firehouse. On a good note, there was a crash in Delaware a couple of weeks ago, and all the firefighters that were on the pumper that went into a ditch walked away. They were all belted, and I'm not going to say that's the main reason they walked away, but come on. We know that certainly contributed to no injuries. Belt up, enforce the seatbelt policy. It does make a difference. Now, I always like to talk about what happened this month in fire service history, and I keep hoping that I'm going to get to a month where I have nothing to say, but there are lessons to be learned from every tragic fire incident, such as the ones I just discussed that just happened currently. But February is no stranger to danger and tragedy in the American Fire Service and actually the world's fire service, and I like to take a moment to remember some people that have passed away at some pretty horrific fires and really emphasize to you out there, those that are doing training or those that are involved in the Fire Service Officer Corps, you need drill topics. Look no farther than the NIOSH website where you can learn. I've talked about it before. We can pull up these line-of-duty desks, and you can do an easy 2-hour drill on lessons learned. These sites have maps, they have schematic diagrams, they have video and audio clips in a lot of cases. You talk about if there's a way to honor those who made the ultimate sacrifice, this is the way to do it. I'm going to mention a couple tonight because we never want to forget. Maybe back a couple days ago on Valentine's Day, you were out with your loved one, enjoying a nice dinner, a movie, celebrating Valentine's Day. But Valentine's Day, February 14th, certainly has had some real tragedies in the world's fire service. And one that comes to mind was in 1962 on Valentine's Day, 2 Chicago firefighters were famous firefighters, Chief Thomas Hoff and Robert O'Brien were killed on Valentine's Day in 1962 when they were caught in a building collapse. For you fans of the movie Backdraft, that's loosely based on that incident because a couple of Chief Hoff's sons rose to prominence in the Chicago Fire Service. There was Ray Hoff, who served as a battalion chief prior to retiring, very, very well-known firefighter, and Bob Hoff, who was the past fire commissioner and one of the most highly decorated members in the department's history, having been awarded the department's highest award for bravery twice. Now, they are the sons of Chief Hoff, who was killed along with firefighter Robert O'Brien on Valentine's Day in 1962. And in the Pittsburgh Fire Department in 1995, which 20 years ago, 3 Pittsburgh firefighters were killed on February 14th, and there's a lot of lessons that are learned at the fire on Bryceland Street. Routine house fire. It was a routine house fire. How many times do you hear that when things went wrong and 3 firefighters were killed 20 years ago, February 14th, on Bryceland Street on Valentine's Day in 1995. And as a twist of irony, a woman died in a house on Bryceland Street just a couple days ago. Just on the same street, not far down from that house from 1995 that burned. A woman was killed just a couple days ago. I think it was February 13th on Bryceland Street. Houston, Texas had a horrible tragedy on February 14th in 2000. There was a fire at a McDonald's restaurant, heavy roof load, and 3 firefighters were killed when the roof collapsed. I believe it was 2 firefighters, I'm sorry, Kimberly Smith and Lewis Mayo, were killed when the roof collapsed on them. I think it might have been a truss roof. There was a lot of weight on the roof, as most McDonald's restaurants have and other fast food establishments. And again, one thing to consider is looking at these incidents and examining them and maybe bringing them into the drills in your firehouse to learn from these and hopefully prevent them. There's just so many lessons to be learned, and it's something to consider and to look at. And even across the border in Winnipeg in 2007, we just passed the anniversary of 2 firefighters that were killed in a dwelling fire in Winnipeg, Canada. Fire Captains Harold Lessard and Captain Thomas Nichols. 32 years of experience the one firefighter had. And these were veteran firefighters, so it doesn't just happen to new people, as we saw with the chiefs in Chicago as well. And a long time ago, in 1955, there was a 9-alarm fire in Baltimore, and 6 Baltimore City firefighters were killed. So February is not a great month, so let's honor them by remembering them, by looking at these fatalities and saying, what can we do to make our departments better? What can we do to prevent this from happening in our fire department? A couple other pieces of big news in the volunteer fire service before we get to our guest. I want you to know that February is the American Heart Month. We want you to get to know your heart. The National Volunteer Fire Council has a Heart Healthy Firefighter program to help you try and do better. We can all do better when it comes to taking care of ourselves. Go visit healthyfirefighter.org and check it out, and let's focus on our health. And again, this month, February, is the American Heart Month, and every year more firefighters are dying in the line of duty because of heart attacks. And we're asking that everybody take some time during the American Heart Month to get to know your health and learn what you can do, learn the risks. And again, National Volunteer Fire Council is really promoting this. You can go to healthyfirefighter.org for more information. And you all know that cancer is no stranger to the fire service. It's in the forefront of both career and volunteer firefighters. It's definitely dangerous. It's definitely there, and it's a growing epidemic. There's been a lot of research done lately and a lot of information passed out. A recent study found firefighters have a much greater risk of certain types of cancer than any other profession: brain, skin, prostate, testicular. In conjunction with that, there's a big campaign going on to try and get people to wash your hood every Sunday. Wash your firefighter hood every Sunday to keep it clean, keep the carcinogens out of it. I did read that they're finding increases in thyroid cancer, and nobody knows why, this increase in firefighters with thyroid cancer. Possibly it's due to the hood we wear, how it's around our neck oftentimes. So every Sunday should be Wash Your Hood Day if you've been using your hood at structure fires. Minimize your risk of getting cancer. I think that's really, really good advice, people. You know, we can all use more members, and there's been a lot going on nationally as well as locally to try and attract new members. On a national level, a couple congressmen are introducing some legislation to create a tax deduction for volunteer first responders. Let's see if that goes anywhere. And, I think we could all certainly use a tax deduction. Local programs like New York State, we have a tuition reimbursement program where student volunteers are eligible to have 100% of their tuition reimbursed in exchange for maintaining their grades and then fulfilling some service requirements in their local department. That's a state effort in Pennsylvania. Fire chiefs are looking to see if they can have a fire tax enacted to help counter some of the pressures they feel for buying equipment. I'm fortunate in my area. We do have a tax base for our equipment. We do fundraising for our social activities, but our equipment is funded by our tax base, and I guess it's not the way it is in other areas. And Pennsylvania here, local chiefs are really pushing to see if they can. That's a great idea. Some other local incentives for volunteer firefighter attraction is Rockland County, which is in New York. They've established a program that offers local businesses will offer discounts to their volunteer fire and emergency service workers. That's a great idea, kind of like what they're doing for a lot of the military. all ideas on how to attract, recruit, and retain members. And I'd like to know what you're doing. What are you doing in your area? New York State sponsoring a Recruit New York, where once a year we open our firehouse doors, try and invite people in, see what we do, and that's in April this year. What are you doing in your area to recruit and retain members? I have an idea, and I'm going to share it with you, and then we're going to get on to our guests tonight. I've always said, you want to recruit and then you want to retain members? Here's my idea. Number one, good, solid, in addition to all the other ideas of social media, publicizing your needs, things like that, good, solid tax breaks for your firefighters. I'm not talking $100 or $200 off your bill. I'm talking a significant property tax break or some type of tax break for volunteer firefighters. And then for your younger members, good tuition reimbursement programs such as the FASNY program. I think we can take that even farther. I think if you had a really good tuition reimbursement program, heck, I've got 2 daughters attending college right now. It is a lot of money, and if somehow we could offer scholarship money, I think that would go a long way toward recruiting members. Now, that being said, if anything like that was to happen, volunteer fire departments have a duty and an obligation to ensure that the people that are getting those breaks and taking those incentives are active participating firefighters. That's my idea on what I think would certainly help recruit and retain members. And we're going to spend a show on other ideas, and good or bad, whether that's a good or bad idea, but that's what I have to say on that. But what are you doing in your area to recruit and retain members? A lot of different ideas and a lot of things that can be done. So that being said, I didn't want to keep my guest waiting too long. I told her I would try and speed things along because I had a lot of news to cover. There's a lot going on in the volunteer fire service, a lot of good things. And I'd like to introduce Candice McDonald now, who is going to be coming on. We're going to talk about reputation management in the American Fire Service, or in the fire service in general. And it's a hot topic today. It's so easy for us to post things on the Internet to try and bring attention to our firehouse, some good, some bad. But sometimes bad comes out of it. We don't mean for it to happen. And we're going to talk about what we can do to promote our fire departments the right way and to deliver that professional message and to handle, if there is controversy, handling it properly, getting out in front of it. And so I'm just looking for some information I had here. And Candice, are you with me?
Yes, I am, and thank you for having me, Tom. It's a privilege to be here.
Well, I am excited to have you on. I've read a lot about you, and I know you were just at the Firehouse World out in was it in California?
Yes, it's warm San Diego, much warmer than it is here in Ohio.
Yeah. And I read some of the great things you had to say out there, and you deliver a great message about the importance of reputation management, which I got to tell you, I think that is a great theme, a great logo, a great saying, and you're a volunteer firefighter in Ohio, and you work for NASA, I believe.
Yes, I do.
And tell us a little bit about yourself and how you came about doing reputation management.
Okay, well, I've been in the fire service for almost 10 years now. I got a late start in the fire service. I was not recruited until I was past the age of 30, but I've enjoyed the last 10 years. It's been wonderful. I'm a volunteer firefighter and the EMS officer for the Winona Fire Department, Ohio. It's a small rural fire department in Ohio full of great members. I'm an active member of the Cumberland Valley Volunteer Firemen's Association. For Cumberland Valley, I serve as the co-chair on the Reputation Management Committee. I am the Great Lake trustee for the International Association of Women in the Fire and Emergency Services, most commonly known to most people as IWomen. Another organization that I proudly serve is the National Volunteer Fire Council. I am the appointed Fire Corps State Advocate for Ohio for the NVFC, and I've served in a number of other capacities for the National Volunteer Fire Council. My educational background, it includes an associate's degree in health and human services, a bachelor's in business management. I have a master's in organizational leadership, and I'm currently working on my doctorate in business with a specialty in homeland security. So as you mentioned,
how do you have time?
The job well, the job that pays the bills, as you mentioned, I work for NASA. For NASA, I work in the Office of Protective Services. So that's what I do, and you asked how I got involved with this topic, and that's a great question. Several years ago, I actually witnessed firsthand how poor firefighter behavior could pull a fire department apart. I was eager to learn more from that experience, and I was working on my master's at the time, and I started to research the topic, and that actually led me to my connection with Cumberland Valley. They are commonly known as CVVFA. And CVFA, they had identified about 10 years ago that poor firefighter behavior was a threat to the integrity of the fire service. So what they did is they actually brought a number of top leaders in the fire service from around the country together, and they created the Reputation Management White Paper. And that document, which you can actually download that at www.cvvfa.org, but that document actually outlined the top behavioral threats imposed by firefighters and the implication those threats had for department leadership. So I started to continue to dig deeper with my research and aspect to that topic and with CVVFA, and at that time they were ready to move forward with providing training to both career and volunteer firefighters on reputation management. So it was a perfect match. CVVFA gave me a platform to deliver the training that I had created, and it's been a great group to be a part of. They share the same passion that I do as far as reputation management, and we've done a lot of great things. So since that partnership, I've had the opportunity to represent Cumberland Valley across the country and deliver the training and offer strategies to different fire departments on how they can implement different techniques and tactics to safeguard their firehouse against threats.
I really think this is a very current topic. I see it there's a lot of good going on out there, but with today's instant communication and instant messaging, boy, the damage can get done so fast, and it might be out of the department's control where things have happened so fast, but you have to learn how to respond to it. So just great ideas that you're presenting out there, and certainly a major, as I tell everybody, I have 4 daughters, and it amazes me how fast things get communicated. I told the story a few months ago where I broke a dish, and I have a little bit of a temper and threw a fit in my kitchen, and a little while, not even 20 seconds later, my cell phone rang, and it was my sister saying, is everything okay? I heard you broke a dish. And I had no idea how she found out. Well, one of my daughters videotaped and put it on social media that Dad broke a dish. And that's how fast the word got out there. So we've got to watch what we're doing, don't we?
Yes, just about every place you go, there's someone with a smartphone trying to capture the next big story. So with that in mind, we definitely have to be cautious of, our own behavior and what we're doing.
Do you have any specific, I like to say the good, the bad, and the ugly, without obviously getting too much into it, but any specific examples of what some of the bad things are that have gone on out there, and then maybe some of the good things?
Yeah, you know what? Almost daily we're actually seeing headlines of firefighters being arrested for things such as arson, theft, substance abuse, violent crimes, and even sex-related offenses. Each headline actually threatens the integrity of the fire department. In this issue, I have to, stress, and I always stress this, issue is not a volunteer problem. It's not a career problem. It's not a rural problem. It's not an urban problem. It is a fire service industry problem. So that's why it's important that we take a look at this. And, when it comes to, you mentioned the good, the bad, and the ugly, fire departments across the country, they're doing amazing things with social media. They're using it as a tool to communicate with the community about fire prevention topics, current community events, and recruitment efforts. Using social media to connect with the community definitely builds relationships and that community support. Last year in West Virginia had some major issues with their drinking water being contaminated. The Sissonville Volunteer Fire Department shared continuously on their Facebook where and when members of the community could pick up bottled water. And, they constantly updated the community of the crisis that was going on and where they could go to help. It became the go-to page for many community members needing that information. So I thought that was a great
great
example of a department that took a situation that really wasn't even theirs and, provided, that support to their community. So social media can be used in that way, as far as the fire prevention and tips and things like that. My absolute favorite social media site that if departments want to check out for best practice is actually Smokey the Bear. Their Twitter and their Facebook account, they do a fantastic job of sharing fire prevention messages and really building rapport with those followers. So that's a great place
Who administers
to check
that?
out a best practice. Smokey the Bear is actually administered. It's under the it's a federal government. So
okay,
it's somebody there. I don't know who in their organization administers that, but they do a fantastic job. Yes, it falls under. So they do a great
folks,
job.
I just want to remind our listeners out there, we are chatting with Candice McDonald, who agreed to join us today to talk about reputation management in the fire service. And as she already has said, it's definitely not something that is a volunteer issue or a paid issue. It is a profession issue. It's something we need to be aware of, and there's so many good things that we can do if we do it correctly. And I got to share what my own company's doing. Our 100th anniversary is fast approaching. It'll be next year, and we have a Facebook page for those that like to friend us and check it out. It's the Snyder Fire Department, and you'll find it on Facebook. And with our 100th anniversary approaching, we thought it would be neat to every few days or so, we're pulling photos from our archives and posting them online, and the feedback we've gotten nationwide from family members who might have moved away 50 years ago, 70 years ago. Oh, my father was a member. My grandfather was a member. I have fond memories of being in a picnic at it just brings out stories, and it connects with people nationwide. Just putting these photos up every couple days of our history and our past, and finding family members that are long lost, and then we let them know that we haven't forgotten their father, grandfather, aunt, uncle, whoever served with us. We try and identify everyone in the photos to let people know who they are. And I've had people call me and just be out of their mind that we found a picture of their great uncle or their grandfather. It's great stuff. It really is.
Oh, that's wonderful. It sounds like you guys are doing a great job reaching out to the community and beyond. That's great stuff.
And folks, if anybody would like to call in, anyone has any questions for Candice, feel free to give us a call. The number is 760-454-8852. Again, it's 760-454-8852. If you have a question for Candice or myself on things tell us what's going on in your firehouse, things you're doing, challenges maybe that you might even have. But social media is not going away, is it, Candice?
No, it definitely is not. And, each day we're challenged with the headlines of another firefighter arrested. And so it's definitely something that we need to be focused on and how we're going to deal with that when it hits social media. And I challenge all of the listeners to take a second and actually Google firefighter arrested, and the results that they'll see is that, there's not one state in the country that's exempt from that. And when a firefighter is arrested, it's never John Smith in the news. The headlines will read, local firefighter arrested for whatever it is they do. And it doesn't matter if that firefighter has left the department. The headlines will just change to former local firefighter arrested. So the actions of current and past members will definitely be tied to your department's reputation. So it's really important to continuously outline with every member your department's code of ethics and how the department operates and the expectations to being a member.
Now, can't we just say, you know what, we're volunteers. I can't control what people do when they're not at our firehouse or at a call.
Well, some people believe that, but, the way I see it is it's a privilege and an honor to be a member of the fire service. We know that it is a 24/7 commitment, and departments must be accountable for the actions of their members. They are obligated to the community. Leadership is better off to have a handful of ethical members over a large team of misfits. And, we as leaders, we're responsible for the actions of our team. So, it's important to definitely, look at our membership and to have control of those members. And I don't know if you've ever noticed, but most people notice that when someone gets caught behaving badly, his or her peers, they're usually not surprised. The red flags have popped up, before a major incident occurs. So it's important that leaders are paying attention to those red flags, that they're encouraging an open-door policy where members can share concerns about other members' behavior, And, not only will intervening early protect the department's reputation, but it can also prevent an embarrassing dismissal of a firefighter, or maybe that firefighter just needs some help and redirection, and we can provide that. And it may be uncomfortable to address poor member behavior head on, but just think of it this way. How uncomfortable will it be when you have to be in the hot seat answering to the media and other stakeholders because you failed to address that minor issue when it started?
What are some? Do you think there are red flags? Like, what should we be looking for? Is there certain specific things, or just kind of like we have 70 members in our department? I'm watching all 70. If I'm the chief, looking for any. Is there something that stands out, or examples maybe that you've seen or heard of, or?
Well, a lot of times when people become frustrated or they have things going on in their life, their behaviors will change. Maybe they'll start to have some substance abuse issues that other members will pick up. Their behavior changes, their attitude changes. So, I always tell people, when it comes to fires, we're not afraid to reach out to our fellow brother or sister and say, hey, you're not protected before you go in that fire. We need to be doing that within the firehouse. We need to be asking those questions and protecting our own members to find out what's going on. And, as we see things that are going on within our own department, I encourage leaders and even members in general to link those firefighters that are struggling with help. The NVFC has a great program, Share the Load, so those members that are struggling with different issues, whether it be addiction, depression, etc., they can be a part of that program, and there's no cost.
Now, that's a great point you just brought up, because I've heard this before. Listen, I'm the fire chief, or I'm the fire director, or I'm in charge of my firehouse, or I'm on the board. I got to work my regular 10-hour day job. I got to deal with my house and things going on at home and get my kid to Little League practice and do homework. I don't have time to counsel anybody. I can't worry about it. If Joe Smith is having trouble, that's his worry. I can't worry about it, and that's really not the right answer, is it?
No, it's not. It should be your worry, because when that person messes up, you'll spend a lot more time dealing with trying to correct that than you would getting that person help. So again, I encourage people to get some of the information that the National Volunteer Fire Council has from Share the Load, and spread that information around your firehouse, and that way people can access that as they need, and take the time to have those difficult conversations as you see people struggling or making mistakes, and link them to the help that they need.
I got to tell you, and I'm sure fire chiefs out there, leaders out there, I'm sure you'll share and agree with what I'm about to say. I never realized, when I became chief of the Snyder Fire Department in 2007, and had spent 10 years as an assistant chief and 10 years before that as a captain, I become chief in 2007. I feel that I am so prepared by the people before me on how to do the administrative work, how to run drills and training, how to delegate assignments, and how to run incidents, how to do EMS, and how to run fires, and train, practice. Nothing prepared me. Nothing prepared me for, I felt like there was a sign from the old Charlie Brown cartoons, the doctor is in. When I was in my office, I felt like there was a sign on that front door or on my desk that said, the doctor is in. It amazed me how you became a counselor almost immediately. You were dealing with people's personal problems, relationship problems, job problems, substance abuse problems. It absolutely amazed me. Nothing prepared me for that. So there are resources out there. Understanding how busy fire chiefs are, yes, you're working your regular job. You're dealing with your family and running around, and, oh, yeah, you've got a fire department to run. But we do have resources where we can at least direct our members to go to. And Candice, can you repeat that again? It's on the National Volunteer Fire Council site?
Yes, it's called Share the Load.
And I know of other departments who have contracted or made relationships with local counseling services where they could help people by pointing them in the direction of counseling services in their area to help them. Because again, we understand we're all busy, and as a fire chief, you want to take care of emergencies. It's tough to deal with these personal problems, and we had some success stories. We had some not so successful stories in my tenure as chief, and it is something to be aware of when you put on that chief's badge or you're a leader in the firehouse. You know, people depend on you. They trust you, and they will come to you. They will come to you with problems, and if we make a difference who knows what dividends that might pay off down the road with that. If we can help that member out,
absolutely.
It really might pay huge dividends. But again, I'm not a counselor. I've heard that many, many times, but there are resources out there where we can direct people that might be having trouble. So be aware of some of the red flags and see where we can step in to help. But can't we just say keep the bad news in-house, and if somebody screws up in-house, do we just keep it in-house, or do we sometimes have to be on the forefront of going and publicizing when we've done something wrong or bad? What do you think about that?
Well, it used to be that issues could be swept under the rug, but in today's era, you're sweeping issues under a transparent rug, and the world's not only looking at the mistake that's been made, but they're also looking at how you as a leader will handle the situation. So what I recommend is if an incident does occur, prepare a corrective action plan that can be shared with both the media and stakeholders immediately. Leaders need to respond quickly to both internal and external environments. It's important that you communicate to your members and to the external components. Poor response time with that can actually destroy a department's reputation, and it can allow for team breakdowns. So quick response reaffirms strong leadership and that the public's trust is the most important thing.
Yeah, I find that good, solid communication is a skill that needs to be mastered. It needs to be embraced. We can't communicate enough, and it's, with society today, it's expected. So get out in front of an issue, address it honestly, and it might be nothing more than we're aware of some problems and we're looking into them, and we'll have more at a later point, but at least you've acknowledged it, correct?
Absolutely. And, and I think that's where building those strong relationships with your community is important. If you're using your social media and your internet sites to build, strong relationships, when you do make a mistake, the public's more likely to forgive you because they're going to be seeing all the good that you're doing through your social media sites. And I'll give you an example here. My husband is also a firefighter as well, and the department that he serves on, they had a person come on their social media site, and they have they have over 3,000 members on their social media site. But they had a person come on their site and attack the fire department and make some negative comments. Well, the fire department didn't even need to respond. It was the community members on their page that responded and actually stuck up for the fire department. So they had built that great rapport that, the community came to bat for them and said, no, this is a great group of people, and, that person was wrong.
Yeah. So one of the answers that I got when social media came to the forefront in the last several years, one of the answers I got from some members was, well, the best way we're going to have to deal with this, since people are posting things, is we're just going to ban social media. No member can use social media and do anything with it. And that's, I knew at the time that was nonsense, and worked with people to develop a policy, and that is not the right. We cannot ban it. It's not going away, correct? It's not going anywhere. It's here to stay, and it's going to get even more. There's going to be more avenues to communicate.
Right, absolutely. And if you're not the one telling your department story, somebody on the internet, they will be telling your story. So it's better that you're the one that's sharing the facts about your department and that you're being transparent online. And, when you tell your own story, it comes from your perception. When somebody else is telling your story, things get twisted. It's kind of like, I don't know if you remember the telephone game from when we were kids, where the teacher would whisper a message in one person's ear, in the student's ear.
Yeah.
And by the time it got down to all the students at the end, it was the message, had deviated from the original message. And that's what happens when we're not telling our own story. So it's important that we are active on social media so that we can communicate what's happening within our department, the positives and all the good that we're doing.
And for our listeners out there, go ahead. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, that's okay. The other thing I was going to mention is that, social media, it's also, great to recruit. So as you had mentioned earlier, and it's something that we need to do as we're recruiting younger generations. They communicate through technology, and we need to be using their medium to recruit.
Absolutely. That's a great idea, and we're going to definitely be spending an entire show on recruitment and retention, because that is a critical area for discussion in the volunteer fire service. And for our listeners out there, just to remind you, you're listening to Fire Engineering Blog Talk Radio. I am Tom Merrill, and you're listening to another installment of the Professional Volunteer Fire Department, where we examine issues that are affecting the volunteer fire service and are important to the volunteer fire service. And my guest tonight is Candice McDonald, who is a firefighter EMT in Ohio, works for NASA in emergency management, and is an author of the presentation Reputation Management in the Era of Citizen Journalism, among other presentations that she does on presenting the right image and the professional image and keeping that professional image in the fire service. And if anybody would like to talk to her, has a question, or wants to share some information, or has a question for me, please feel free to call in at 760-454-8852, and feel free to ask. And Candice, then there are so many other things we can be doing. I keep talking social media, and news and bad news, but there's so many good things we can be doing with it. As you said, recruitment, but so many others. There's so many great examples being done out there. The people are doing out there, advertising. Even it's okay to even post if you were at a fire, right? We don't want to do it in such a way that someone was hurt. Obviously, if there's a fire, I mean, it's terrible, and we don't wish that on anybody. But we want to do a good job for them, so we have to be careful there, right? We don't want to brag. Well, I don't want to say we don't want to brag, but we don't want to just make it seem like we're celebrating their loss or their tragedy. Correct? So there's ways to do that.
Absolutely. Yeah, there are ways to do it. And, in departments, they should be using social media to post things like fire prevention tips, community events. And it's always good to post those photos from trainings and when you go out and do a fire prevention talk, get some photos and share those things. And you shouldn't be afraid to toot your own horn. Departments need to share all of the great things that they're doing, the thank yous that come in from different family members and people in the community. Ask them if you can share that on your social media site. It's great to share those success stories. If a firefighter advances from a level 1 to a level 2, give them a shout-out on social media. It's up to the department to promote the good things that's going on and to create that fire department brand, because nobody else is going to share that. So it's important to be able to share those things.
And for those that maybe don't, let's face it, there are people running departments in that maybe aren't in tune with social media, don't understand it. But this can also begin at the basic levels, the way we used to do it with the local newspapers as well, right? We're not just talking internet. You can build rapport with your local newspapers as well, the community newspaper and things, and send them releases and photos, and just give them a short story. Hey, we went to a Home Depot the other day because they were having a community day. Here's a picture of the kids at our fire truck. Or we went and did fire prevention at the local school. Our volunteers on their day off, or who took time off of their work to go do this, right? So it doesn't have to always be on the internet. I don't want anyone to think that. There's other levels that you can do this at.
Absolutely, and I'll give you an example from within my own department. We had a member participate in the local polar plunge to benefit one of our animal shelters, and he dressed up as a Dalmatian. His fiance dressed up as Sparky the fire dog, and they represented the fire department. He did the polar plunge. They had photos in the newspaper, and then the news actually shared that on their social media site. So it was,
get the word
a great
out.
story.
Get the word out.
Yeah, absolutely. So
now, one question that comes up quite a bit, and I don't know how crazy you can get with this, but maybe you know, maybe you don't know, and if any of our callers know, or what about the worries of faces? All right, we're going to go stand by or do a fire prevention at a school. Now, there might be 30 kids in this picture. How do we get releases for 30 kids? It's not going to happen. If we're doing it in a positive way, promoting fire safety or promoting our visit to a school or a business, do we need releases to be putting people on our social media page or doing a press release?
You know what I always recommend for things like that? Have somebody take a photo from the back where you see just the back of the kids' heads. Or, if it's your own community, grab your own kids or relative child and pull them up as the example for that photo. So that's one way that you can get around that. But have somebody take a photo from the back where you can see all the kids sitting there listening and you're just getting the back of their head. So that's one way you can, get around that and be respectful of the permission and the releases.
And another thing that I find is I try, when we do it, to let people that are there know, hey, just so you know, we're going to be posting this on our website or our Facebook page. And what they like about that is oftentimes then they'll go there to save the copy of the picture. We let them save it. We don't. They can right-click on save the picture as, and so we're telling them, and at the same time they are excited to go check it out and get a copy of it. So, but I know that is
Absolutely.
a concern that is a concern that some people have about, geez, am I allowed to post these things? And and it is tough because, the news media does it all the time, and they don't seem to worry about it, but we're, I guess, held to a little different standard on that.
Yeah, and the other thing that you can do is what I always do is if you're at an event and there's parents, other people taking photos, I say, hey, can you tag the fire department in that photo? Ask the community members to tag the department in the photos they're taking at that event. So then that pulls that off that pulls that liability off of you because it's, the parent or the community member tagging you and not you tagging you in that photo on social media.
Okay, yeah, all good stuff, all good. Definitely, and again, so many different things. Recruitment was definitely a huge area that can be helped. We put our application right online. The younger generation likes that. I bet you we're getting more applications now that were printed offline than from people that stop at the firehouse. We put all the requirements to be a firefighter on our website so they can put phone numbers for contact information. So if they have more questions and lots of ideas with to promote the good things. But we should probably have some SOPs, right? We probably should have some pretty good policies in place for our department's social media policies and help guard our reputation. Can you? Is there some that you would recommend we definitely need to have?
Yeah, absolutely. When it comes to SOPs and policies, I definitely encourage every department to decide what is best for them. The IAFC and the NVFC both have great social media policies posted in their member resource sections. I would encourage departments to not only implement those policies, but to spend time going over each bullet point of the policy each year with members and as new members come on. Go over each bullet point and make sure that they understand why it's a policy and let them ask questions if they have questions about that policy. What I find is so many times people are handed a policy and say, here, sign this, but it's never explained to them. So as leaders, we have the responsibility to spend that time and explain to them the expectations that we have for them being a member.
Now, what were those sites again, in case people want to go look at them? If you could just say where they can find some of these policies.
Sure. The National Volunteer Fire Council, they actually have in their member section, they have the social media policy sample there, and the IAFC has the social media policy as well. And then we have a policy in our department as well about official photos of anything official being done needing to be approved by certain people, the chief and maybe one or two others if the chief's not around. But I shouldn't say it's a problem, but one of the things that happens is you have a fire department function with guests that are not members of the department, and they start snapping photos and maybe post something on their personal site that goes against what the department stands for or portrays them in a situation that maybe the department would prefer they don't be seen in. Can we do anything about that? I mean, how do we stop Joe's friend from posting something if it goes against our policy because he's not a member? Well, you can't prevent anyone from snapping a photo, and that's why it's important to ensure that you're acting ethically all the time. Integrity is a 24/7 responsibility. But one of the things that I know that happens, especially in the in the volunteer world, is that our family members are they serve in some capacity, whether it's support. They have people from the community coming in, asking them questions, commenting on their social media. Hey, do you know what happened at this accident? Blah blah blah. So I encourage departments to maybe have a movie night where they invite family members down, which this builds morale. They watch a movie and they say, oh, by the way, we want to talk to you about something, and then explain to them, some of the policies and procedures and expectations that they have for, even family members. That way they're aware of how to handle those situations when, one of their friends asks them about an accident or, a call, so that those family members know how to respond to those. So, again, it goes back to educating not only our members, but also the people that support our members. And
I found, too, what I like to do is before an event, if I'm thinking of like sometimes installation photos. We all have a good time at our installation banquets. Most of us, in many cases, take the night off and maybe are off duty and have coverage and things. We have a good time at these parties, and that's the one. That's probably the biggest problem we have is sometimes those photos making it on people's sites. And so what I think would be one thing that could help with that would be for a reminder in whether you do a department newsletter, whether you text it out or mention it at the monthly meeting a month before, a couple of weeks before. Hey, as a reminder, let's try and control what's being posted and let's put the good pictures up and or make sure you go through our PR committee of what's going to get posted and pass that on to any of your invited guests, your boyfriend, your girlfriend, your husband, your wife, whoever it is, and say, let's try and control what we're posting and always portray us in the positive image. And remember, we might have a committee that needs to review it before it goes on even your personal site, because it is our department official function. That could help, I would think, and help limit sometimes these issues that we might get into.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, that goes back to that educational piece.
Yes, yeah, and I would imagine too we should. There's so much we review with our new members when they come in. We have a whole 2-hour, maybe longer now, orientation program. It is probably longer, where we go over so many rules and regs, and a lot of them for their good with safety. And this might not be the personal safety, but it's certainly department safety, how to protect our department. So it should certainly be worked into that orientation at some point. And again, reputation management, I can't say it any better than that. That's something that needs to be worked into to department orientations for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And for those that aren't aware, there's also the National Firefighter Code of Ethics that individuals can implement within their own department that outlines those expectations. So that's a great document to implement with all of your firefighters. Not only does it outline the expectations, but when somebody does make a mistake, you can go to the media and say, we don't condone this behavior. That's why all of our members are required to sign this code of ethics.
And where would you see that? That's on the National Fire Council website again?
No, actually, Cumberland Valley has the Code of Ethics posted on their website, so you can go to www.cvvfa.org and find the Code of Ethics there.
Is there any that stand out as things we should certainly be emphasizing to our members, or is there a whole bunch of them?
There's a whole list, and it covers, basically all of the things from social media to, personal behavior and those types of, basic ethical codes that we should be following. So it's a great list, and I encourage people to review that with new firefighters, and then again, review that each year. Have everybody sign it again each year and spend the time to go over each bullet point and explain why it's important to the department so that you can create that culture of integrity.
And it doesn't even have to be anything online. When we talk about reputation management, and Candice, I don't even know if you branch off into this in any of your presentation, but when we talk reputation management, I am very passionate about every time you put that Maltese cross on. And being a typical firefighter, I probably have 1,000 shirts with Maltese crosses on them. But when you put that on, or when you drive your personal vehicle with that fire department sticker that promotes you as a firefighter in your home department, or you have that blue light or green light or whatever light you have, or whatever identifies you as a firefighter, you might be off duty, you might not be going to a call, but you have a duty and an obligation to act appropriately. And we need to convey that to our new members as well as reinforce it with our current members, right, Candice?
Absolutely, and we cover those offline behaviors as well in the course that I teach. So yes, it's very important how you act 24/7. It impacts everybody within the industry.
And the same thing we said about now back to social media. I can think of many examples of people I know who are in the fire service, and they post things that are controversial, which is their right as a citizen. I get that. Controversial or nasty, but don't kid yourself that people that know this person also know they're a firefighter, and in some cases a fire officer or leader, and subconsciously or even consciously some people are thinking this somehow is also affiliated with the fire department. Some way, shape, or form. They're saying it as a firefighter, even though they're doing it on their own personal page. It affects their reputation. Don't kid yourself. It does, correct?
Correct. It certainly does. And there's been a number of firefighters that they've found themselves in hot water because things they've posted on their personal page.
But again, so much good out there, so many good things we can be doing. And one of the questions that did get shouted out to me via a text message, and I know we touched on it briefly. I don't know if you know this or not. I don't have the answer. Are there official laws, rules that govern these taking of photos or posting of photos and video at emergency scenes? Do you know? I understand what we said about trying to limit actual faces, but is there official rules when the media seems to be able to post anything they want? Are there official rules that govern what we can post? Do you know?
Well, you know what? Every state has their own set of laws, and when it comes to that, for example, in Ohio, it's my understanding that the state fire marshal can confiscate your cell phone as evidence if you snapped a photo at a fire that could be arson related. They could, take your phone and enter it as evidence, and you might not get it back for a long time. So, in addition to being an issue of respect, anything that ties to an incident, to a patient, that shouldn't be shared. And I'll share, a story here. This past summer I was speaking at a conference out of state, and a good friend of mine who's also a fire chief was at that conference as well out of state. While we were in the training, his daughter was actually killed in a car accident. Information was already shared via social media about the accident, and he had not been yet notified because he'd been in training all day. So this was a perfect example of why departments should avoid even giving basic information out and, their family members giving information out about an accident, because it's not hard to connect the dots at all when it comes to things like that. So, regardless if it's social media or in conversation, you should not be talking about a call. You just never know, who knows who. And I'll give you another example of something that happened to me last month. I was teaching a class in Delaware at the State Fire School, and on the way back, we stopped at a little diner in Delaware for lunch, and while standing there in line waiting to be seated, we were having a conversation about Vice President Joe Biden and his support for the volunteer fire service. As we were having that conversation, a man actually leaned over my shoulder, and he says to me, "You need to be careful what you're saying. I'm standing right here." And I turned around, and it was actually Vice President Biden. So you just never know who's standing behind you that you might be talking about.
Oh, my gosh, that is something. That is, wow,
yeah,
no kidding.
If the vice president can be standing behind me while I'm having a conversation, you just never know. So it's just, we need to be very cautious of what we post online and the conversations that we're having offline.
So what I like to say is, one thing I like to try and do is, for the good stories, the PR stories where we're out with the public or we're doing so, even digging our hydrants, we had a great PR photo show up in our local paper and on our Facebook page of our firefighters out shoveling fire hydrants. But so those, I like to say, with our people today, our younger, that's instant. We put that out pretty quickly. But the incidents, whether it's an auto accident or a fire, we might take our time a little bit more with that to make sure we're not posting something that isn't common knowledge yet, like you just said, and just to take a second to look it over one or two extra times to make sure there's nothing in there that could be perceived as or is controversial. So, because the immediacy is there today, that need for some people to do things immediately. And again, I got to go back to my own personal, not to bore everyone with my own personal stories, but my wife and I are very, very conscious of when we're having conversations as a family that our 16-year-old is not recording it, because we've run into that. That's just how these kids are today. Everything is photographed, or recorded, and it even extends into our own personal life. And cell phones off. We have to make sure we say that. But that's how these kids are. Right. Everything's got to be immediate. And so we're torn sometimes caught with that.
And one of the ways that that departments can overcome that, again, these kids, most of us, we told stories through words. These kids tell stories through photos, so they want to share that information. So what I encourage in my presentation to fire departments to do is to have somebody that approves those photos from trainings, from calls, things like that. Approve those pretty quickly and have, whether it be a flash drive that you leave at the station that they can upload themselves, or some departments they're having where somebody can text them a photo and say, may I post this photo? And then the chief's giving authorization that way and asking what context they're using that photo. So we've got to give these kids something because, again, this is how they tell the stories, and they are your best recruitment tool. So letting them share those pictures, can help bring volunteers, and it helps keep the passion, alive within them by being able to tell that. So, yeah, I think, like you mentioned about your daughter, these kids, they want to share, and they do it instantly.
Yeah, all good advice, definitely, absolutely. And are there ways for people or departments or leaders to kind of watch what's being said about them? Because sometimes people may have a problem, we don't even know about it. One of our members did something, and the public posts it or does something, and we don't even know our name was mentioned or brought up in a bad way. Can we monitor what other people might be saying about us so we might be able to respond appropriately?
Yeah, actually, it's pretty simple. In addition to monitoring your own department's own social media page, you can use tools like Google Alerts, TalkWalker, and TweetBeep. And what those tools do, and let me back up here, all these tools are free. TweetBeep,
what is
that? It's for Twitter. But all of these tools, they're online listing tools. They're free. What you do is you go to each of the websites and you enter your department's name. And each day you'll actually receive a notification via email letting you know where your department was mentioned online. So it takes the work out of it. It'll actually notify you when your department was mentioned. This way you can find out what the community's saying about you, and you can find out what some of your own members might be posting that they shouldn't be. So, these online tools are free, and they're a great way to find out what's being said about your department. And I always say to people, social media is like that one friend that we all have, the one friend that isn't afraid to tell you the brutal truth, whether you want to hear it or not. So it's important that we listen to what's being said so that we can make corrections when we do mess up and, provide some feedback as well.
Oh, excellent. Can you repeat? I'm writing those down. I never heard of those before. So, again, if somebody would like to monitor, or the whoever's in charge would like to monitor what's being said about their department, they can get these resources where now?
Okay.
Are they apps?
They're Google. They're you go online and you sign up for them.
Okay.
So Google Alerts is one of them, TalkWalker, and TweetBeep. And if anybody, wants more information about these, they can reach out to me, and I can send you the direct links as well to sign up for those. So, and you can reach out to me at CandiceMcDonald.com, and I can send all of that to you.
Great. And again, we're on Fire Engineering Talk Radio. I'm Tom Merrill, host of the Professional Volunteer Fire Department, joined by Candice McDonald tonight, talking about reputation management and what we can do in our firehouses to enhance and keep that great reputation we enjoy. And we're getting close to the end here, but if anybody would like to call in, the number is 760-454-8852, and just lots of good information. And another one, I got to tell you, it's funny that you mentioned about monitoring what's being said about your department. I'll be very honest, I came across something that's very minor, but I want to address it, but I'm not a chief officer anymore, and I want to talk to my chief about how we should handle it, and maybe the answer at this point is not to do anything. I didn't realize, but like many fire departments, on Christmas Eve, Santa Claus jumps on our pumper, and we don't even know how he gets on there, but all of a sudden he's on our pumper truck, and they're going around our fire district wishing Merry Christmas to all of our residents. And it's been that way for many, many, many years. And we got the idea within the last few years, to post the route on our Facebook page so people kind of had an idea of when Santa could be expected to come down the street. And I didn't realize it, but this year some people were missed. They didn't either came before they said they were coming or didn't make it on the street. And there were some negative comments posted. I feel terrible about it, as anyone in my department would, but I wish we knew that people posted that on December 24th, because we might have been able to respond the next day. I know it was Christmas the next day, but we might have been able to respond a lot quicker than if we do it now. It's a very minor example, but it is an example of trying to keep track of what's being said, and if things are handled properly, it can actually build a better relationship with the department. And as a chief, whenever there was something controversial that went on at an incident, I found, as hard as it was to pick up that phone and make a phone call, because I knew I was going to get screamed at by a citizen or someone was going to be unhappy with what I had to say, I found that doing it immediately and being open and honest still paid dividends in the long run and protected my department's reputation.
Absolutely. It's important to be honest and to be the one to say you screwed up and to apologize. People have more respect for you as a leader and as a department when you can say, I messed up and here's what I'm going to do to fix that.
Yeah. You know, another thing, that a brand new thing surfaced, and maybe you've seen it. I just saw it for the first time. I don't think the firefighter was doing anything wrong, because I'll tell you why in a second. But to me, this is a new phenomenon that we need to get out ahead of, and it's the cell phones in the turnout gear pocket. And I'm not talking about snapping photos at accidents and things like that, because that's been going on for a long time. But what I saw and is being blasted in some circles is a house is burning, and you've got firefighters reaching into their pocket and snapping photos as they're supposed to be fighting the fire. Now, the firefighters in this case, I believe, were a truck company, and they did their operation, and then they were taking a breather. I get it. And in other cases, it might be other people that are outside and their job is done. But it is something to be aware of. And I don't know if you've come across that, talked about that, but we all want those photos for our wall. I believe in hanging those photos on the wall. They tell a story of your firehouse and its history and heritage, which I'm a huge advocate for. But even that's got to be done the right way. And do you have any suggestions on what that right way might be? Is it having a designated department photographer, which not everyone can have the luxury of, or a certain citizen that comes to the calls, or what do you think? Have you run across that at all?
Yeah, and again, I think you brought up a great point. Perception, can be everything when it comes to a situation like that. Some departments they have they use a fire corps member, which is a citizen volunteer, to come and they take the photos and their high vis vest and what they need to be safe on scene. Some departments they have a photographer designated to do that. It's just being cautious of how you're taking the photos. And, I always tell people, be conscious of, where the family members are and things like that when you are snapping those photos, because things can come across the wrong way.
And I know as firefighters there's nothing better than doing a good job. And we're happy and everyone's safe and the fire's out and we're packing hose, and it builds camaraderie. It definitely does. When you have a good job, whether it's extrication, a good save at an EMS call, or it builds camaraderie, and there's nothing wrong with the happiness that you might be feeling at the moment. But we have to remember people are watching, and we have to kind of temper it a little bit if possible. And I'm not going to say you're not going to high-five another firefighter because he did a really good job on the knob or made the perfect cut in the roof, but we just got to be aware of how it looks, and we have to be aware of the joking and the laughing. And one thing my department used to do, and I'm sure many do, is after a fire was out and we were finished almost overhauling, we usually brought the owner in and to show where the fire started and what we did to put the fire out and explain why things were done a certain way. And we found that built great rapport with the poor owner that just suffered this terrible fire. But before the owner came in, the chief would kind of give a heads up to the inside crew. Homeowner coming in, and that would spread through the house for whatever firefighters were in the house, so people knew, okay, guys, watch the language, watch the behavior, watch what we're saying, and let's respect this homeowner as they come in. And it worked excellent to do that. And I think that's something people, if you're not doing it, it's something to consider. It's certainly something to consider, because perception is everything and says a lot about how a department acts in a professional manner. Agreed?
Oh, absolutely, 100%. That's a great tactic to take.
Yeah, it worked out absolutely fantastic. And one last thing I got to ask you, and I saw that in your presentation, you addressed something, and it's very unique. Well, not unique, but it's interesting, and it has to do with the older generation, those that lived through the war years of firefighting, talking about the big ones in almost a nostalgic and almost a glorified manner. and you have seen or have examples of that can lead to some bad things in certain instances where it could lead. You talked about firefighter arsonists, and they found that sometimes there's a connection between stories like that and the younger firefighter wanting to have glory of his own. Is that true? They're impressionable. Impressionable?
Well, I'm not sure what as far as the research that's out there, but one of the things that we're hearing, there's a lot of arson among. A lot of the times when there's arson, there's some firefighters that are being charged for that, and we're starting to see those pop up in the news more and more. So I think what happens is, they're so excited to go out and to get that big one that they're creating that fire. So that's something to be cautious about, and making sure we're educating our members about the danger of that big one. So, I think that's where it comes. The whole point is the education piece, making sure that our firefighters are educated about the danger that comes with fighting fire, so that they know, the dangers of arson and things like that.
Yeah.
So I think it's okay to share those stories. It's great, but just to make sure that we're also educating those members about the dangers. And I know as stories have been shared with me from older generations, they've also talked about some of the close calls and things like that. So it's important to hear those as well so that we can learn from them and know the risks that are involved.
Yeah, excellent point, Candice. Really, everything's been excellent point, and it's something that maybe we haven't given a lot of thought to, and that's the reputation management. And I really want to thank you for joining us tonight. And again, if anybody has a last-minute comment they'd like to make, that number again is 760-454-8852. And if you have any questions for Candice or myself, feel free to call in. But this has been a great conversation about how to preserve and protect and even enhance our reputation, and also how to use social media to get the word out on all the great things we're doing, whether it's shoveling those fire hydrants or doing that PR at a local school or fire safety talk, or even making a good cut job at a call, getting somebody out and treated properly, or putting that fire out. There's so many great things, and again, it doesn't have to just be on the internet. There's ways you can do it with your local newspaper and local news agencies as well. You can get them involved by contacting them, assigning a public information officer, and get the word out. But definitely want to have some policies in place. And Candice, when we finish up here, I'm just wondering if we can summarize some of the important points of what we talked about tonight, and some of the main themes about policies, procedures, and what we should have in place, and recognizing that social media is not going away, and we need to embrace it and not hide from it. Can you give us a summary of some of the main points that we want to make tonight?
Well, you know what? Basically, one of the most important things is making sure our members know what the expectations are, what the rules are, and the guidelines. It's all about educating our members so that they know what's expected of them, what will be tolerated and what won't be tolerated. Another thing that we didn't get to touch, and I want to touch on real quick, is that a great best practice is to implement a peer mentoring system. That can be a great tool for accountability. Assign a mentor, who has a clear understanding of the organizational values to the new members coming on, and that'll help to create a healthy culture within your organization. So basically the biggest piece in this reputation management thing is to lay the groundwork and to make sure that you follow through when it comes to leadership. As people start to violate those things or they start to cross over on that line, don't be afraid to have those difficult conversations to redirect them and to bring them back on track. So those are some of the important things, and also to remember to have a balance when it comes to social media. Our younger generations, they want the photos, they want to be on the technology, and we need to be able to provide them with that balance so that we can keep them engaged with the volunteer fire service and so that they can be part of the tradition.
And if anybody wanted to get a hold of you, they want to talk to you more about it, they want to bring you in for your presentation, anything like that, how can they get a hold of you?
So I can be reached. I have a website, www.CandiceMcDonald.com. You can also find me on Twitter at KSU Candice, and I'm also on LinkedIn. So feel free to reach out. The other thing that I didn't get to mention, as far as our presentation, Cumberland Valley, we just entered into a partnership. We received some funding from the National Volunteer Fire Council to be able to provide the reputation management training to different organizations throughout the country. So we do have some funding available to get that message out there. So if it's something that you're interested in having come to your area, please reach out to me, and we'll see what we can do about making that happen.
Fantastic, and I would highly encourage people to think about that and help deliver this message that we're professional firefighters, and as such we act in an appropriate manner, and whether it's something we're posting or talking about or how we present ourselves when we have that Maltese cross on, or on our own personal Facebook page, or when we're driving with that sticker on the windshield, and so many other ways. We just need to act appropriately and get our people help if they're struggling, if there are some red flags that are popping up in your organization. Try and get some referral services, and Candice outlined a couple right on the National Volunteer Fire Service website. You can get some information on that. So let's do everything we can to keep what I think is an absolutely fantastic reputation going that we have in the fire service. And Candice, then, is there anything else you'd like to say before we sign off, Candice? Can't thank you enough for being here, and so much great information, and I look forward to maybe talking with you more on this. There are so many other areas we could talk about, and I know you do another presentation on how to prevent theft in the firehouse, and I'd certainly like to have you back someday, because I'm sure we could talk for another hour.
Well, I thank you for the opportunity to be here. And you mentioned FDIC earlier. For those attending FDIC, stop by the ResponderSafety.com booth. I'll be there spreading the message of responder safety on the roadways. So, if you have questions or situations, don't hesitate to reach out. Hopefully, if I don't have the answers, I'll connect you with somebody that does. So, again, thank you, Tom, so much for allowing me to be a part of your show.
Oh, absolutely. I'm glad you agreed to be on it, and a great message. Keep up the great work, and I look forward to talking with you again, Candice. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, you have a great night, Candice. And, folks, this has been Fire Engineering Talk Radio. A couple things before we sign off that I just wanted to go over with you. A lot of great ideas for future episodes. Reputation management, to me, it's wow. A lot of great information there. Reach out to her if you have any more questions or any other information or any other ideas on what we could be talking about regarding that. Feel free to contact me on Facebook, friend me on Facebook, Tom Merrill, or on email at tamerrill63@aol.com. But ideas, some of the future shows, we're going to be talking about leadership again with Chief Salka and hopefully Chief Lasky. Apparatus driving is a huge area of concern throughout the country. We lose far too many firefighters in apparatus accidents. Highway safety, another huge area of concern. Physical fitness, fire dispatching and radio communication. History, heritage, and traditions in the fire service. Trying to get Glenn Corbett to come on, a great fire service historian, talk about why we do things a certain way, and to realize that a lot of things that we do today got their start a couple hundred years ago. And it's just so much. So stay tuned, people, because we have so much to cover regarding professional volunteer fire operations. We're going to do a show on engine operations in the volunteer fire service. We're going to do a show on water supply and understanding hoses and nozzles. And it sounds maybe boring to some people, but hopefully we're going to do it in such a way that we make it interesting. And we understand that volunteers maybe don't have a lot of time to do the study in that. So we did it for you, and we're going to try and present that in a way that's easy to understand. So if you find yourself sitting at a pump panel one day at a fire, and maybe you've only driven a few times that year and only been a couple drills, things will come back to you in a quick manner. So lots to talk about. I'm excited about it. If you've got anything you want to tell me, good or bad, things you don't like that I've done, things that you like, ideas, feel free. Please reach out to me via Facebook or email, and I'd be happy to address them. And I'd be happy to bring my presentation, the Professional Volunteer Fire Department, out to you and your department. I will be at FDIC presenting that on the Tuesday. It's a 4-hour workshop. but I can be happy to bring it out to anybody that would be interested. So feel free to get a hold of me. And before I sign off, as I started doing a couple shows ago, I'd like to end on a shout-out. And I got to tell you, it's becoming very, very difficult to choose one department to highlight as I sign off the Professional Volunteer Fire Department, because so many departments are out there doing so many great things. I know Candice and I talked about some good things tonight. We also talked about some bad things, but you know what? The good so far outweighs the bad, and there are so many great people out there, great firefighters, great volunteer fire departments doing such great work. And people are sending me things and letting me know, and I'm finding them online, and lots to choose from. But today I settled on the West Harrison Volunteer Fire Department outside in New York State. I got to give a shout out to some of their members, some of their junior members, who a couple of months ago had to cope with two tragedies in the same week that affected these junior members, because a couple of their high school classmates had some tough times. So they went out and did some collections for them. One of the high school classmates' mother was killed by a drunken driver back in November. And then just a day or two later, another classmate, a high school junior, died of a stroke just within a couple days of the tragedy with their one classmate's mother. So one of the junior firefighters said, we asked ourselves, what can we do for the family? That would be the captain of the junior firefighters who said that in the interview. What can we do for the family? So they went out and had a boot drive. They had a boot drive to raise money for these two classmates of theirs, the one whose mother was killed, the other who passed away, just to help them out and help their families out with expenses. So hats off to these junior members, and hats off to the entire West Harrison Volunteer Fire Department in New York and their chief, Frank Forgione II. You should be proud. You exemplify what it means to be a professional firefighter, and I just wanted to give you a shout-out as we sign off. So, again, this is Tom Merrill. I want to thank you so much for joining me tonight. And lots and lots of good things going on out there, and as I do, I'm going to do it every month. I'm going to talk about all the great things that are happening in the volunteer fire service and also some of the challenges we face. But at all times, I want to ask everybody to please keep up that professional image, keep up that professional reputation, because it's definitely something that we all embrace. So thanks for tuning in. Remember, being professional has nothing to do with earning a paycheck, everything to do with delivering competent and compassionate service and taking care of our customers and our people. Honor our profession, people. Have a great night. Thank you, and stay safe, brothers and sisters.